the Stranger Than Fiction podcast. I'm Chase.
And I'm Adam. On this episode, we are talking about death, but also survival. In our last episode, we talked about time and humanity's fixation with it. Some of this fixation, as we discussed, is because as humans, we have a finite amount of it. And when we run out of time, obviously, we die.
Or do we?
Well, that's a fair question. But sometimes, though, it's not our time and we still have some left. So on this episode, we're covering some of those instances where it looked like someone's time was up, but in actuality, it wasn't.
That'd be a weird feeling, I think. To think that your time is up and then you come to peace with everything and then sort of meditate out into whatever you're going into, and then you just wake back up into this shithole of a world we live in.
You're so optimistic.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, there has to be some sort of peace there, right? Peace on the edge of death.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably talk about some of that, how that happens and what it feels like. And
have you ever had a near-death experience?
I have not. No, I have not. How about you?
No. Well, I don't understand why that was the hard question to answer. I feel like it's a very easy. I think it's pretty much like a yes or no answer.
Well,
right?
Have I almost ever died? That's your question?
No. Have you ever had a near-death experience?
No.
Okay. Well, that seems like it was a way easier answer than when I originally asked you. No, I have never been on the cusp of death or felt like I had an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience or anything like that. I am awake or sleeping, and that's it. And then I live. That's pretty much what I do.
The closest I came to dying was I almost got hit by a firework one time.
How? Were you lighting it or somebody shooting at you?
It was like this firework that lifted off the ground maybe 4 feet and then moved forward. So it went up and then went forward in a straight line. It was this weird type of firework. And it wasn't supposed to come my direction, and it did. Almost hit me in the face and probably killed me. But I ducked under it and saved my life in the nick of time.
And I know we'll talk about this later, but did you have any sort of experience in that moment where you see the firework coming at you, where your whole life flashed before your eyes, or you saw the future, or you saw the past, or anything?
No, then I would have answered yes to your previous question.
Okay, let's move on. Fuck face.
So before we get too much into the topic, wanted to touch on the cause of the week for this episode.
Ooh.
So the cause of the week that we chose was Safe Alliance. You can check out their website, safealliance.org. They are a charity that provides hope and healing to those impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault. 1 in 3 women will be impacted by domestic violence or sexual assault in their lifetime, and 3 women are killed each day in the United States by their intimate partner. So obviously this is a very important cause, somewhat related to what we're talking about here today, an unfortunate situation. So hopefully we can do a little bit to help them out. And if you're interested in supporting them, again, you can donate directly, safealliance.org, or you can join us in our Cause of the Week campaign on Patreon, patreon.com/STF Talk.
Sort of a bummer statistic, all of those that you just mentioned, but I'm glad that we get to support that again. Like we said in the beginning of this, I'm glad we're doing this. So
yeah, absolutely. Feels, like we're not as much just sitting here wasting our time recording our conversations, right?
Yeah, we're doing that too, but
gonna help somebody. The topic here so many people and cultures obviously believe different things about death and the afterlife, but also what happens when someone comes close to death or have a near-death experience also varies by, different cultures and stuff. Much of the actual research and neuroscience on this suggests that this is a very subjective phenomenon that is closely correlated to one's cultural, philosophical, and religious beliefs. So basically that what you experience in these kind of moments of these near-death experience very much depends on what you believe in. So if you believe in God and angels and stuff, you're more likely to see them, obviously, or at least think you're seeing that type of stuff than if you were, say, an atheist or you didn't believe in that stuff. So it's very correlated to those beliefs.
But do you feel like that these experiences still happen across the board, right? Atheist, God-fearing folk, whatever else there, like the experience itself still happens. It's just a matter of how it's interpreted is based on your beliefs, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the brain is capable of generating this type of phenomenon and experience, and it's just a matter of what you believe in and how you kind of interpret it. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
And there's a lot of commonality and similar traits of things that can happen in these types of experience. So some of the common types of things that are described by folks that have these experiences are like just a general awareness of being dead, like your body has died or whatever. You have this kind of out of body experience, like you talked about. Sometimes it's you're hovering above your body. You can see that. There's usually this sense of like rapid movement where you're moving quickly between different locations or what have you. And then obviously the most probably typical thing is you see this powerful light or these beings of light is a very typical phenomenon that's described.
Yeah. I mean, I've read some stories too where there's also like reaching into different dimensions or different realms or entirely different worlds as well. The chemicals in the brain are a really interesting place to live, I think.
What about the "my life flashed before my eyes" phenomenon? We hear that like phrase, but I don't see it reported as much.
I mean, it's one of the things that was talked about in some of my research around common traits is that you have this kind of experience of flashes of moments from your life. But yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific examples of people frequently talking about this, but it was kind of a common trait as well that was mentioned in some of my research.
Yeah, I think that's also referred to as the panoramic life review, I think. And I think people that experience that sort of, I think it's like the subconscious, like bringing up all of those random memories that you don't think you remember into play. And you're like, holy shit, I remember that now. Like the taste of that macaroni and cheese when I was 7 years old or something like that. Like a big moment in your life sort of boils up from your subconscious. And you're right. That one isn't brought up as much in reporting or research or anything like that. But to me, that seems like one that is always depicted in movies or books or media when it comes to near-death experiences, where it's like you just see the whole playback of the person's life.
You raise an important topic here: macaroni and cheese.
Oh,
how do you like your macaroni and cheese? Do you like it crispy, like baked, or do you like it
both? All?
No,
Yeah, I just like it.
I don't like it when it gets crispy.
All right, so there's different schools of thought here. All right, so here's I like it when it gets crispy, but that's like baked mac and cheese, right? So which is awesome because you can pound a bunch of different cheeses in there, probably 4 or 5 different cheeses. It gets crispy on the top. You get crispy. You get the nice texture. You get the nice texture change underneath that. But I am also a huge fan of boxed macaroni where it gets super liquidy and it's just like shit cheese inside. But then I also pour like an entire thing of Parmesan inside to make it like a porridge.
That's what Ollie does with his mac and cheese.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's very 4-year-old-esque. But those are, I mean, I can go for fancy mac and cheese. I can go for, I love mac and cheese the same way that I love any form of like pasta.
Well, we've already discussed my love of pasta, so.
Yeah, I know. But that's that. We digress.
Yeah, so I mean, continuing this episode about mac and cheese.
That's probably an interesting episode.
No, but so the first story that I've got is actually a pretty, well, actually, let me take a step back. So some of these experiences can be interpreted in a positive way and some in like a negative way. So like sometimes people talk about like more positive experiences of seeing like dead family members or loved ones or, like angelic type beings. So like positive type of experiences. But there's also experiences where you have more darker or negative experiences, which is the story that I'm going to tell here first.
Are we both on the same page when it comes to these things actually happen, though? They're not just like perpetuated stories or something like that, where these things actually do, like it is a common occurrence for, if you're in a coma or if you're getting ready to die or something. Like this isn't all a fallacy.
I mean,
right?
There's been several examples of people that have talked about having these and then they ultimately down the road say that they were making it up or lying. So some of it is definitely hard to substantiate, but it seems safe to me to say that the brain is definitely capable of generating this type of thing. I don't really believe that people are seeing a lot of the things that they're seeing necessarily, I guess. But I think to me it's mainly the brain, but some of them are definitely strange and interesting and difficult to explain, I guess. But
Okay.
So this first story was a widely circulated report from the 1970s that was actually published in a book called Return from Tomorrow by a guy named George Ritchie. And in the book, Ritchie described where he came down with pneumonia after he was brought to an army hospital in Richmond, Virginia, pretty close to you, where he was pronounced dead. But he was revived maybe like about 10 minutes later. And he had a very horrifying story about this kind of 10 minutes of death, if you will. He claimed that he had this out-of-body experience where he wandered around the town. He met a mysterious figure who took him on a guided tour of very disturbing places. So one he went to was a bar where people were desperately trying to drink, eat, and smoke cigarettes. But
oh man, terrible place.
But they could not, no matter how hard they tried. So basically the people were they were trying to partake in these vices that they loved, but they couldn't do it. And then kind of had this rapid movement type of experience where then he found himself in a barren wasteland where there were spirits of all shapes and sizes, and they were engaged in a vicious battle, and they were fighting and punching and biting and kicking and slashing at each other. And then he would go on and say that, a lot of these, they were pantomiming sexual abuses upon each other. Just all kinds of strange stuff.
And this is all in 10 minutes?
Yeah, this is in his 10-minute period of near death, I guess. But basically this experience that he had inspired him to later become a psychiatrist and write several books on the subject. And those books have actually served as popular sources and inspiration for near-death experience researchers since the 1970s. And it's one of the first kind of most popular accounts of a near-death experience in this negative light that to some could have been experiencing hell.
How do you explain that stuff though? Like, how do you explain that vividly, like that vivid picture of all of that stuff? Like, I not from like, how do you like, hey Adam, listen to this, but like, how do you explain it from like a physiological standpoint? Like, how does that even manifest? That just is confusing to me because there's no like foundational knowledge base, right? It's just, you're just creating that stuff on the fly.
To me, it's a lot like, I would equate it a lot to like dreams. So if you go back to our discussion of dreams, I mean, you talked about some dreams where there was an alien on the bed and you and me were hugging, and you had these vivid depictions of things that didn't happen. So to me, it's a very similar type of situation, or at least you could describe it or explain it in that way.
I guess it's just like what is he saying? Like demons, essentially demons, or some,
he
like,
called them spirits.
Two factions of two factions of hell were going at it in his little realm. That'd be terrifying. First of all, like, how does that change your perception? Does that change? Like, if you have that experience, do you wake up and you're like, what is this? What is this life that we are living here? Like, do you start to like be a better person? Or do you like completely like fall into hell and you're like, I just fucking hate everybody? And then
I mean, he didn't describe like how much time he felt like this 10 minutes lasted. Some of these accounts, people experience. He was actually pronounced dead for 10 minutes, but I assume based on the amount of activity he experienced here, he felt like it was longer than that, but. Yeah, I mean, so depending on that type of stuff, how long I spent in this kind of hell and that how much I had to endure, I mean, I could definitely see, no matter what I tried to tell myself about my brain, it would probably make me feel like I needed to walk the straight and narrow a little bit more, I guess.
That would be so terrifying. And then you wake up and you're like, where am I? Am I in this hell-like place? Or, oh my God, I think that would change my life for the worst. Like you'd probably at that point you're probably like, what is life? Like you're probably hoping that you die, I think, because you've seen like the worst, whatever that is, whatever you're manifesting You've seen it, and it's the worst, and that's terrifying to me. Because you hope. Listen, here's a tangent for a second. You hope that when you're dying, when the worst moment of your life is happening, or you're laying in a coma for 10 fucking years, and your consciousness is just running rampant, and you're having all of these experiences. These are the worst moments of your physical life. And then what's happening in your brain is getting worse. Like there's no escape.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no like you're not happy on the inside and you're like dying on the outside. Like there's literally no escape from just the hell. And that's just a dimming thought.
I definitely agree with you.
Do you believe all that guy's story? But you said like that was the basis of a lot of he became a psychiatrist because of it, right?
Yep. And he wrote a bunch of books.
It was so yeah, I guess he's probably I'll believe him. Did you read any stories about people having near-death experiences and then coming back from their near-death experience and being in a different body?
No. I can't say that I saw too many of those.
Do you think that's possible?
Being in a different body. So, like, you're talking like reincarnation or something?
Well, the consciousness isn't matching up to... And I'll go in. I guess I'll just tell you the story
Okay.
before I just go and explain. So, and I'm not going to read the whole story, but I do want to read the first part because I feel like somehow it's relevant to be funny in this story, but I don't feel like it's relevant to his near-death experience. But it says, I did have a near-death experience. It's mildly amusing in retrospect. I'm fat and bald. I had heart surgery go wrong.
Did you write this?
Yeah, this is me. I'm not bald. Look, I'm not bald, I swear. But I don't understand how the preface of like
I'm fat
why
and
you're
bald.
prefacing this story with I'm fat and bald, single, 37 years old. Like I don't know why this is like the weirdest dating site of all time. But so he goes on to say how he flatlined that he during his flatlining when he was having this heart surgery that he went up to heaven, quote unquote heaven, whatever that exists as, and he saw his mother, and his mother comes over and tells him that you won't be here very long, son. And then he wakes up on the gurney, and supposedly wakes up on the gurney, and the doctor asks him to count to 5, and he counts to 5, and I don't know how, is it uno, due, tre, quattro, cinque, or cinque? Is that Italian?
Sure.
Is that how you speak? Is that how you say it?
I'm not Italian.
He said,
as we discussed.
he counted
I'm
to
not
5. He counted to 5 in Italian.
Hold on. Are you saying Italian or Italian?
Italian.
Okay.
Just-
Just the people that
how are you
the
supposed
people
to
that
say?
say Italian or they it just kind of irks me. So
I think I say Italian. I just say it Italian, so I say it really quick and just mumble it up between the two. And then he counts to 5. The doctor asks him to count to 5. He counts to 5 in Italian, and then he realizes in his brain like, oh, I don't speak Italian. And then the next thought that he has was a thought that comes across in his brain in Italian.
you're definitely saying Italian, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, it doesn't matter. And then he feels like he has entered back from his flat line. He goes up to heaven, sees his mom. His mom says, "You will not be here very long, son." Goes back down into some Italian guy's body, and then can only speak Italian. However, it doesn't happen when he actually comes out of everything, and he's back to normal and everything else. And he tells the doctor that it's too early to go to the morgue.
So when he woke up, he wasn't the fat bald guy?
Well, it doesn't state that, but what they do state is that he is English or of English descent. He speaks American, and then when he comes out of his near-death experience, when he comes to, the doctor asks him to count to 5. He counts to 5 in Italian, has an Italian thought in his mind, and then something happens. He flatlines again.
Okay.
And then he wakes up.
So like
he wakes up 10
so like
minutes later,
temporarily
and then everything is normal.
his soul or whatever, his essence went into the wrong body temporarily.
Yeah, something
and then,
happened.
And then they got it right, and he flatlined again, and
Yeah.
they shot him back over to his correct one.
I guess. Yeah.
That's-
I guess you can transfer souls.
That's weird. I mean, I guess to me that's just he was like having like this near-death experience. He was just seeing this, like, it's like when you're having like a dream in a dream type of thing, you have a near-death experience of having a near-death experience. It's how it feels to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's weird. You read a lot of times too, and this isn't near-death experience, but you read a lot of when they like people that come out of a coma or coma, come out of a coma, come out of an
Come out of a coma. Watch out for those periods.
Yeah. They come out of a coma and they can like speak fluent Chinese or something.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It's probably similar to that, but
watch out for those commas.
Watch out for those commas; they'll make you speak Chinese.
So sometimes, the interesting story is not necessarily the out of body or near death experience that someone has when they're on that brink of death, but more so what the person is actually able to survive and endure. So I've got a couple stories for you on that type of subject.
Ooh, that's cool.
This first guy, his name was Wenzel Mogul.
Fake name.
He was from Mexico.
That's even more fake.
Why?
That's not a Mexican name.
Well, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. But he was basically branded as a traitor in the early 1900s Mexico. He was sentenced without a trial to execution by firing squad. So at the time, this was during the Mexican Revolution, the firing squad was the preferred method of execution. And so this squad of 10 people, 9 soldiers and 1 officer, would all shoot their weapons. And then the 10th guy, the officer, would aim at one of the prisoner's vital organs to deliver that final kill shot. So this Wenzel, his lucky day was on March 18th, 1915. The Mexican federales took their positions and fired upon him, including the 10th guy, shooting for his face, which is usually a good idea if you're trying to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And they all hit him, obviously. They were firing squad. So they assumed he was dead, thought the job was done, moved on. But Wenzel actually survived. And although he was in excruciating pain, he waited for all these guys to leave. He left the scene and made his way to safety. And basically, he became horribly disfigured. He went on to live a full life, and he actually became kind of a legend from the standpoint of Ripley's Believe It or Not. He appeared there in 1937 in Cleveland, Ohio, actually at the Auditorium. He was dubbed El Fusilado, the executed one. You want to see a picture of him?
Yeah.
Can you see him?
Where's it? Yeah, it's like I feel like that guy's making the first fish face.
That's not very nice, man. He got shot in the face.
I know.
And he survived.
Here comes my near-death experience. Fate is creating my near-death experience right now for that joke.
I mean, obviously that's a horrible to get shot in the face like that, but at least he kind of became kind of popular afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, that's a positive near-death experience. So, I mean, you have to live with that face, but yeah, I mean, that's a good story. I still don't think his real name is Wenzel Mogul, whatever the hell you said it was.
Again, I probably butchered his pronunciation.
Okay.
The next name is much easier if you're ready for that one.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I got a couple of stories too, but go ahead. I mean, you're on a roll.
This next one is about Mike.
Mike. Okay, that might be a fake name too.
So
go ahead.
In 1945, there was this farmer. He was sent out to the yard by his wife to bring back a chicken for dinner. Okay? The farmer chose this 5.5-month-old chicken named Mike.
Yep. So
using an axe, you do that good old thing to kill the chicken, cut his head off, right?
Mm-hmm.
They even have the saying, right? Run around with the chicken head cut off.
Yeah, good one, Adam. I didn't know that saying.
Well, the chicken did not die after he had his head cut off. And despite having no head, the chicken was still able to balance on a perch, walk around, and the farmer continued to care for Mike, fed him milk and water via an eyedropper, small grains of corn. He lived for 18 months.
I feel like I fucking read this
a year
story
and a
at some
half.
point.
He lived for a year and a half with no head, and he eventually died when he choked because he didn't have a head, and the farmer could not clear the blockage. So he died, but he lived with 18 months without a head.
I have indeed. I have heard that story because one, I remember the fact how he died, that he choked and they couldn't unclog his neck.
chicken neck.
And then I remember very vividly in my mind, like going through like the picture of the guy like dropping pieces of corn into a headless chicken. That just for some reason that really makes me laugh. But
Mike
yeah,
the chicken is a survivor, man.
I'm also concerned that this farmer has no idea how to actually name animals, and Mike is not a sufficient name for a chicken.
What's an appropriate chicken?
You don't name farm animal. You don't like
Sir Cluckster.
Yeah, like Clucky or Beaky or something along those lines. But not Mike. You don't name animals.
Do you name your you didn't name your dogs
names.
Barky or
That was on the list. It was on for sure on the list. Like, it got vetoed. But you don't name Mike. Like, I feel like if you have a best friend and a chicken, they shouldn't potentially be named the same thing.
Was it
like
a
I just
rooster? Because otherwise it would be a female chicken named Mike.
No, he was a cock.
Oh, okay.
that wasn't very nice. I mean, we don't know what his personality was like at all. But
So are you against the people that name their dogs like Pete or Paul or Mike?
yeah, because it should be PD, PD or like Sir Peter or something like that, something clever. I just feel like animals that are named human names are
Okay,
weird.
let me
But,
ask
I
you,
mean,
what are your dogs' names?
Okay, my dog's names are Mabel, Agnes, and Gracie.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but I also don't know anybody named Mabel, Agnes, or
Well, that's
Gracie.
because you didn't live in the 1930s.
Exactly.
But if you did, you would know plenty of them.
You know how weird of a person you would be if I introduced myself as Mike and you're just like, oh, my chicken's name is Mike. I'd be like, what the fuck are you? Who get out of my face? So that's all that I'm saying.
Fair enough.
So did you read the story about the Indian chick that had cancer? So she's laying in a coma, like all of these stories start. She's not fat and bald though. She doesn't start the story as to how she what she looks like. But she's in a coma and she can hear all the doctors. Obviously, the doctors are saying how she's going to die to her husband.
Yeah, they
But
say sometimes people in a coma can hear, right? Or
yeah.
understand.
But she claims that she could also hear her husband talking to her brother in a plane, telling him that she has cancer, she's going to die.
Like an airplane, not
She
like
also-
the astral plane.
Yeah. Oh no, not like a different dimension. But she does claim that she is in a different dimension, or she was in a different dimension, that she was just filled with love and peace and everything that feels nice that you should have in a different. This isn't really a funny story. I feel like I'm like building up to a punchline, but there isn't really a punchline. She in this coma, she realized everything about life. She realized why she had the cancer, what she needed to do if she survived the cancer, what death was going to feel like, what death was supposed to feel like, what death was supposed to mean to her. It's just much like all these stories start with coma. All my stories start with like, I just can't. Just go into this tangent, but I can't imagine, Adam. Like, and that's why I wish you kind of had one with the firework.
Can't imagine being in a coma.
I can't imagine being in a coma, but like I can't imagine having like you're laying there and you're having these sort of thoughts of like you just feel at peace. Like I'll go back to like Travelers, the TV show on Netflix, not a sponsor, but like they can like in the future they've developed a system where like you can create a black box and like you can go into somebody's brain before they die and like go in and communicate with them and do all this stuff and try to figure shit out and all that stuff. But it feels like that's what happens. Like all of these stories sort of culminate into like that sort of mindset where like if we could go into somebody's brain in a coma and like visualize this stuff, it would be fucking trippy.
So are you saying we're establishing here that Travelers is real life?
Yeah, I'm beginning to think. I finished Travelers. I know we talked about it in the last episode. I finished Travelers finally, and I think it is a great depiction of what the future holds, and if time travelers came back to the present, what they would be doing. I think it's pretty accurate.
Okay.
I just think that I think it goes back to your belief system too, right?
Yeah.
Like you said in the beginning,
Absolutely.
where if you are on your deathbed because of cancer and you're in a coma and you know you're going to die, I feel like you have a much different mindset comparatively to somebody that like gets shot and into the ER and flatlines. And then I feel like you have a much different. I feel like if you have cancer, you're much more at like this is a much more peaceful sort of like you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Your relatives speak to you, like you can see all this stuff comparatively to like that hell where like they're having like God of War going at each other and everything else. Like I feel like that's what happens when you're not so at peace with dying. That's a point, right? Let's go back.
You just had like an epiphany?
Let's go back to that because I want to make sure that everybody hears that. If you know you're going to die, here's my theory. Let's mark this down. Here's my theory on near-death experiences, okay? If you know you're going to die, let's say a long-term illness or whatever, cancer, whatever it may be, and you have these near-death experiences, they're peaceful, they're finalizing, they're looking at heaven, they're looking at your relatives, you get to talk to whoever you want to, you have these out-of-body experiences to see all the love around you, everything like that. And then if somebody comes in here and blasts me in the back of the head with a gun and I go to the hospital and flatline, my near-death experience is all over the place. I could be in heaven, I could be in hell, I could be in both, I could be just like riding a fucking unicorn somewhere like I'm tripping. All of this stuff, I feel like you have a much more like fluid near-death experience. Are you riding on my train with that or no?
Sure. I mean, I don't have any reason to dispute it, I guess.
But do you feel like it makes sense, right? I'm running with that theory, man. I'm going to publish that.
You write a book?
I'm going to write a book. My dear near-death experience theory from a guy who's never had a near-death experience.
That's that's coming from a real place of expertise then.
Let me ask you this, though, before we move on to another story. Do you feel like these near-death experiences are proof that, I mean, we can use dimensions, we can use realms, we can use heaven or hell. Do you feel like any of this is proof of any of that existing?
I don't feel like it's proof of anything. I think they're too subjective. You can't use it as proof of anything.
Okay. No, I agree. I'm just...
circumstantial evidence at best.
Okay.
Have you ever been skydiving?
No. I mean... I laugh because if you know me, I don't leave the fucking house. I don't do anything. No, I've never been skydiving. I'm very risk averse. I don't want to die purposely.
Okay, so there's this story about a woman named Lindy Harding. She was an avid skydiver. And, skydiving is a pretty safe venture generally. The odds of getting hurt are usually pretty slim, because there's lots of checks and safety measures and whatnot. But on one of her jumps, basically the worst thing that could happen happened to her, which would be what? Do you know? If you're skydiving, what's the worst thing that can happen?
You splat.
Well, your parachute doesn't open. Okay,
yeah.
So her parachute didn't open. Well, it kind of came out, but it got tangled up, and it didn't. So it came out of the bag or whatever, but it got tangled up. It didn't open correctly to, properly slow her down.
God.
So
it gives me anxiety.
She plummeted a mile and hit the ground. Okay.
My God.
She obviously should have died, but somehow she survived, and she only had a broken nose, two broken ribs, and that's it.
No way.
Somehow, as well, she decided to go skydiving again after she healed.
God. Stop. Don't do it again. You fucking splatted on the ground.
No one can explain how she survived. The tangled chutes would have slowed her down some, but, you're falling a mile. You're still going way too fast to logically survive. She did have some short-term memory issues as well for a little while.
No shit.
But, it's incredible. Like, how did she survive that? I have no...
You know what pisses me off?
Complete idea
is that
at all.
Good people fucking die by just living. And then these fucking schmucks who, by all Final Destination movies, tell me that they're supposed to die. That lady was supposed to die coming down falling from the sky. That's the equivalent, Adam, of falling out of a fucking airplane
And she survived.
It literally is the same exact thing. Falling out of an airplane, hitting the ground, and saying, "Oh, is my nose bleeding?" Like, it's the same fucking thing. But there's no explanation for that. But what you can tell that humanity is stupid by that story too, because she did it again. She's toying. She's toying with if something happens.
She's
Adam,
giving the middle
fate,
finger to the Grim Reaper.
Where fate tells you, look, you're about to die, and you just fucking just shove your gigantic fists in the Grim Reaper's ass and say, "Not today, dude, not today," and he just breaks some ribs and break your nose, and then the next time the Grim Reaper, he's gonna have a butt plug in. And he's not going to let you shove your fist up there. And he's going to say, "Yeah, today, motherfucker." And she's going to splat again. And she didn't. And somebody else probably died because she didn't.
I mean, I think she's a badass.
I don't think she's a badass. She's not a badass. How does your chute not opening and you not dying make you a badass?
You fell a mile and you had like a broken nose and a couple of broken ribs. Dude, she is a complete badass.
Yeah, she would be a badass, Adam, if she like caught herself. Or like she did
Landed
something
on her
that
feet
prevented
like
her
a
from
cat
dying.
or something?
Yeah, or like did just a roll. Like, okay, I'm calculating the angle now. If I come in at this angle from a mile down without a parachute, I can do a nice little barrel roll and or a nice little somersault and survive. No, she should have died. She didn't. She's not a badass. She's a fucking idiot for going up again and trying it again. Stop. Stop. It's the same reason, like, in your head, if you OD and you don't die, and you still do drugs, I understand it's a fucking mental issue, but stop. That should be the sign that says, okay, I got to stop this. You know?
Well,
Whatever. That enrages me. That story just rages me out.
So this next guy, he didn't do anything on purpose. His name was Harrison O'Keene.
All of these names are made up.
No, here's Harrison right here.
That guy looks nervous. He looks nervous for that
Well,
picture.
he had a pretty harrowing experience here. So,
all right, let me hear it.
Harrison was on a tugboat. He worked on a tugboat, and he was on his tugboat, and he was
okay. And he was happy on his tugboat.
He was happy on his little tugboat, and he was one day while he was on his tugboat. He was sitting on the toilet. Okay.
Oh.
He was wearing only his underwear. And
as one does on the toilet.
boat started to sink. Okay.
Okay.
So he becomes trapped in this his basically his little cubby room that he was in at the time, and all of his crew on the tugboat died. And this boat sank down to the bottom.
It flipped over?
Bottom of the ocean.
And he fucking lived in a little bubble.
Correct.
In a little air bubble, right?
Survived in an air bubble for 3 days at depths that divers can usually only spend about 20 minutes before they need to come up. So, I mean, he basically lived in this little air bubble 3 days, no food, no water, wearing only his underwear. He had to, listen to all the sharks and stuff killing his crew members.
No, that's not real.
Yeah.
That's not a real thought that he had.
Yeah.
Like, what does that sound like? What is the shark?
What does a shark eating someone sound like?
I don't believe that part of the story. Like, this guy comes back. He's sitting in this air bubble in the fucking boat, and he's listening. What does sharks eating somebody sound like? Where are these people at that they're audibly getting eaten by sharks?
They're in the boat. It's a tugboat. Tugboats are not big, okay?
I don't know. That's garbage.
But he was in there for 60 hours. He overcame thirst, hypothermia, and obviously asphyxiation in this air bubble. When divers eventually found him, he had to go sit in a decompression chamber for another 3 days because if they just would have taken him into the normal pressure, it would have killed him. And he actually holds the world record for the most time spent trapped underwater.
What is the number? How long? How many? Is it measured in
60 hours.
I could probably do that.
In your underwear?
But he didn't spend it underwater. He spent it in.
He was underwater at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. Okay, but that's a technicality. He was underwater in an air bubble.
Oh, okay, dude. You're
right.
Yeah, but
That's the only way that he could have survived.
It's
So
an air
it's
bubble,
the
yeah.
equivalent of being in the water with your head above water, right? With something over it.
Yeah,
It's
but you're in a
it's
tiny
the
little
equivalent
air
of that.
bubble, and you're breathing out carbon dioxide. I mean, you don't want to be in an air bubble. That's not a good thing.
At a depth that should be messing with you.
Yeah, exactly. Most divers, when they go
Yeah.
down there, even when they're wearing a dive suit, they're only down there for 20 minutes.
Okay. All right. Everybody calm down. Just making a point.
Okay, I want to see you do this
Christ's
in
sake.
your tidy whities.
I'll do it. I will broadcast the podcast while doing it. We'll do the next episode via bubble underwater. How do you feel? Do you feel? And I have obviously, I have my opinion on this. How do you feel about people utilizing unprovable near-death experiences to write books, to write movies, all of this stuff to become famous or make money or whatnot? How do you feel about that?
I feel fine about it unless they're like really pushing it as truth. Like if they're using their near-death experience to like inspire this story or book, that's fine. It's like just like a dream. Same thing.
How do you feel? So then work with me because this is leading up to something. So there's a book written in 2010 called Heaven is for Real. And it's written by a father. It's the father's account of his son's near-death experience.
This is the one about the boy, and then they turns out to be false, right? Or they made it all up.
Oh, I don't know.
The boy who went to heaven, or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess I should. Hold on, but that doesn't. But it doesn't say anything about him making it up.
Yeah, it came out like years later that they admitted to making it all up.
Is it called Heaven is for Real?
I think so. Yeah, and then like he talks about like having conversations with, like he comes back and like allegedly knows stuff that he shouldn't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so I don't know how you're going to fucking edit this, but I'm going to continue on because that's a good. But that it sort of works into this whole theme of monetizing these near-death experiences. But so this father writes a book, 2010. It's called Heaven is for Real. His son Colton has his appendix rupture, and he goes into whatever you go into when you have your appendix rush, and then he gets rushed to the hospital. He goes unconscious and alleges that his son met Jesus, God, his great-grandfather, whom he had never met, his older sister, who listen to this bullshit. He met his older sister, who was lost in a miscarriage, but nobody had told him about. Which, to me, like apparently, when you have a miscarriage somewhere, that kid still grows up somewhere. Like that, it's just a weird thing. But this kid's like, I'm looking at a picture of this kid right now. He's like, maybe like 7. I don't think he's even that old.
Yeah, and he was like
photo.
on like the
Maybe,
Today
like,
Show
5.
and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, Jesus was riding a rainbow-colored horse. He sat on Jesus' lap, all while angels sang songs to him. But you're claiming that this was actually debunked?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep, that's correct.
So,
because this kid, he came back, he quadriplegic, right? After he came out of his coma.
Oh, I don't know. I don't have the whole fucking.
Right, you need to
background of
do
this
some
kid,
research before you come and deliver these stories here.
I don't know. I looked at the source of the story and it just sent me to Amazon to buy the book.
Don't do it, man. It's all a
So
lie.
I'm not going
It's
to.
all a lie.
The kid doesn't look like a quadriplegic.
You guys are probably talking about two totally different stories.
No, heaven is for real.
Yeah, Heaven is for Real by Todd Burpo. Oh, Colton Burpo. He's got his own Wikipedia page, which means this is probably gonna be a fake story. Sold 10 million copies. Oh my God! It sold 10 million copies, Adam. We could make
Nearly
something
5
up.
years after it hit bestseller list, a book that purportedly to be a 6-year-old boy's story of visiting angels in heaven after being injured. Now this is a different one.
Yeah. See.
The boy who came back from heaven.
Okay, have fun editing this episode.
I just cut this whole story, man.
This was the whole part. This was my whole section of do you believe in monetizing these stories? And I went into this thing.
Sounds similar.
It's very similar. So basically, yeah, you can make up shit and you can sell a lot of books if you put enough vivid details into it.
So this is categorized. This one, "Heaven is for Real" by Todd Burpo, 2010. Kid's not a quadriplegic.
No, I guess I'm talking about The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven. That one's fake.
That one's fake.
Good distinction, though,
well,
because I can see how it would be confusing.
Yeah, it's really close.
But I think this one sort of like infuriates me too, because we said earlier in the episode too that you don't believe that like these near-death experiences are proof of anything, right?
Definitely
Like
not.
if you go and talk to your loved one when you're in these near-death experiences, it doesn't mean they exist somewhere, right? You're just something is happening chemically or whatever in your brain where you can manifest this, right? So the fact that I have so many problems with this story because, one, this kid's fucking dying. His appendix rupture. He claims all of this stuff is happening, which to me is, one, I do not believe that if you have a miscarriage that his sister grew up somewhere and greets him when he's getting his appendix rupture, say, "Hey, I was your sister, but I was never born, but I still grew up, and like here's the school that I go to," and all this shit. That's weird. But then the father utilizes his son's story, who is obviously a toddler, making all this. God wrote a rainbow. There was shit like it makes nothing, and then or it makes no sense. And then his father takes this story and uses it to prove that heaven is real. Calls it a Christian book. Sells 10 million copies, and like it's marked in history as like this big thing. To me, this just it just really rubs me the wrong way that this kid was dying and tells you all of this stuff, which is probably fabricated because he's fucking 4.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know obviously these people, but there's a lot of a lot of parents out there that take advantage of their children. And I mean, if you got all these singers and stuff, it's like the same thing. Like if you're like a struggling musician, you can go sing Christian music and like have a safer route to popularity, I think.
Yeah, but you're not going to make as much.
You're not going to make as much, sure, but something is better than nothing.
Okay, good one.
What?
Al.
Would you rather have $10,000 or $0,000?
$0,000.
It's a trick question. No, but I find it to be very underwhelming that this guy used his kids' trouble to profit off of and pretend like this was proof that
at least he hasn't come out and said it was a lie like I claimed. So
I'm gonna watch that. You said he was on the Today Show and everything.
Yeah, and he's quadriplegic. So yeah, that was the boy who came back from heaven. Sorry for shanghaiing your story here. Big gap in the story there is how the fuck the guy becomes quadriplegic. But no, that's okay. Now it gives me something else to research. That's probably an equally as interesting story. Did they profit off of that story? Oh yeah,
as well?
they made a like. It was the same thing, almost the same thing as you described. They wrote a book, sold a bunch of money. Yeah, sold a bunch.
So they sold money.
Great deal. I got some great deal on some money here. 2 for 1. 2 for 1. Sold a bunch of books for a lot of money. Same thing. But yeah, I guess this kid's quadriplegic and whatever.
Huh.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. You don't have to apologize.
My
to
last
me.
story is about a guy named Carlos Camejo. That's a legit name.
That sounds like a legit name, and hopefully this guy's gonna be from like fucking Minnesota.
No, he's from Venezuela.
Okay.
He got in a car accident. He was 33 years old, and he was basically pronounced dead. They took him to the morgue, like you do when somebody dies, and they were going to give him an autopsy. So they go to give him an autopsy, cut him, and he starts to bleed. So like actively bleed.
Oh, vampire.
They promptly begin to stitch him up. He wakes up, and his family had arrived to identify the body, and come to find out, dude's still alive. Here's a picture of him holding his death certificate.
Oh man, he looks angry.
Fuck yeah,
He
you'd
was
be angry
angry
too,
in that picture.
motherfucker.
No, that can't be the last story. You have to tell Chase. You have to tell him this story. Because it ties into our creepy child experiences, too.
Okay, I guess I got one more story.
Please,
Okay, go
because
ahead.
this one I feel like needs to be heard. This freaks me the hell out. Do you want me to tell it?
Yeah, go ahead. You can tell the story of Kelvin Santos, another legit name.
He was a 2-year-old toddler who was pronounced dead. Sat up in his coffin during his funeral and asked his father for a drink of water before laying lifeless in the coffin once again. This is according to Brazilian news sources.
Was he a quadriplegic?
No. So anyway, the boy was rushed back to the hospital where he was pronounced dead a second time. So boy wakes up, asks for water, dies again, but then stays dead.
Was it poison water?
They didn't. I don't know if they even gave him water. He laid right back down.
So I wasn't going to do this one because I think this is a complete fabrication.
Okay, it's not. Did you
That's-
Google it?
No, that's so absurd. How can this dead body sit up and
You don't have to
ask
add
for
it to
some
the
water
episode, I just-
and then go back to being dead? Doesn't happen. I mean,
happened.
that would be terrifying.
It happened. There were witnesses. It was at the funeral.
I understand that.
The vampire.
But
my God.
But he went back to being dead. If he was a vampire, he would have stayed alive. And he was only
understand
2
how
years
you-
old.
That phrase doesn't even register in my head of went back to being dead. Hey guys, just checking in. I'm going back to being dead now. So see you later.
So near-death experiences, man. What do you think about all these?
I think that near-death experiences are a thing. I think that we've talked about my theory now, my epiphematic theory, and I believe that you shouldn't use these as a means to write a book or profit off of. These should be your own experiences, and you should appreciate that you get a chance to actually have a consciousness outside of these to come back to and relish in these stories. But otherwise, I think they're just interesting stories to be told, and they're completely unprovable. There's no way that we can have an
Yep.
opinion one way or another because they're basically the stories of these folks. It's sort of like alien abductions, where okay, well, maybe, I guess, might be possible. Cool, sounds good. So yeah.
So I mean, I think you're right that you can't prove any of this, and my opinion might change if I were to have one of these, I guess. But if anyone out there has had a near-death experience and you want to let us know about it, we would definitely love to hear about it.
Don't direct us to your book.
Yeah, except we won't buy your book, correct? You can come and talk to us for free if you want to.
You can promote your book while
Yeah, we'll let you promote to our 10 listeners. But also, before I share my profound final thought, I guess I'll just as well circle back to the Safe Alliance. So again, our cause of the week, safealliance.org. This group, again, helps those impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault. So definitely a very worthy cause. You can join us, patreon.com/STF Talk, if you want to support our Cause of the Week campaign, or you can donate directly if you wanted to at safealliance.org. So again, I don't know what comes after we run out of time in this life and ultimately die. And I'm not sure that I want to know, but as we kind of talked about, almost every religion and culture has a different perspective on what happens. And in my opinion, none of them are probably 100% right. But regardless, I think it's probably undeniable that the brain, human spirit and will to live is honestly pretty incredible. And some of the things people can survive really is stranger than fiction.
Ooh, good one.
Thanks a lot for listening. Stranger Than Fiction is the brainchild of Chase Ferris, Allison Davila, and me, Adam Davila. We would love to hear from you on one of our social media accounts. You can find us at Stranger Than Fiction Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, or at STF Talk on Twitter, or check out our website, stftalk.com.